Welcome back to Total Education with Neil. We are in the midst of the summer, and I've had two amazing co-hosts, and now I've decided to go another route. And today's kind of reviewing some of the areas we're going to be covering in the next couple of months, especially going into the school year and the challenges. But before we do that, let's get a quick update of what's going on with the Total Education Network and now the Total Celebrity Network. You can go to my website, totaltutor.net, for more information. Twitter, Total Tutor, Neil S. Haley, Facebook, LinkedIn, Neil Haley, Instagram, Total Tutor, and Pinterest, Neil Haley. And all those different places you can connect with me, especially Facebook, asking questions, specific things. A lot of interesting celebrity interviews. We continue to grow again. We have over 2 million listeners a week. We're heard in 180 countries, plus have 100 plus radio stations. The television program has gone through some changes. First, we had Dr. G, who was phenomenal, and she went on to do a couple things with WQED and left. And then my good friend Jared, who now is employed again. So I'm excited he's employed again, but now I have to go my route. I have to be able to do the show on my own. So we've decided through my great producer at Bethel Park, Dave Cable, that we are going to start taking callers, guest callers, not callers to ask questions, but great guests from international perspective to come on the program, because we can get experts from anywhere contacting us via my studio line. So that'll be next week, the next episode. But really what I wanted to go into is some really things that are getting me fired up involving education. And that's why we're going to really focus our attention on areas that the old Total Education Hour really did focus on in the live format. And that again can be heard on 88.3 FM in Pittsburgh on Fridays, or WRCT streaming live at 4:30. And we really get into a lot of controversial issues on that and the Total Education News Show. I do have 7 different programs, so I wanted to jump right into it. And that's updates, after giving updates on the radio network, the education debate that's developed. And based on this California decision that really hasn't changed anything yet, the war has begun with the education reformers and also the teachers union. And I mean, this war is hot and heavy. And it's very interesting. A good friend of mine, Dimitri Melhorn, that I'll see if Dimitri wants to come on the program. I'm sure he would love to be on. Dimitri is just a brilliant guy, lawyer who worked for Students First. With Michelle Rhee. I'd love to get Michelle Rhee on the program as well and do this for the television thing, as people that have studied education reform understand what Michelle Rhee is doing and how really there's a war between the old school versus the new school atmosphere in education. And it's quite interesting indeed. The butting heads between the education reformers that have the parents on their side versus the teacher unions has become hot and heavy. And some debates have gone through. One is tenure, teacher tenure. And I want to ask you guys a question out there in listening land about teacher tenure. Do you believe it should take more years for a teacher to be tenured? In California, it was 18 months. Can you imagine 18 months? That just is outrageous as a former teacher. And when I finally got it and the light bulb finally came on, was about 5 or 6 years into the profession. I knew how to do it. I could handle it. I always kind of looked at monitoring and adjusting, but I never, ever thought at 18 months I had any clue what I was doing. And they were giving teacher tenure in California. Well, based on that ruling, because a lot of parents had to sue the California the teachers in California and LA, that changed. But it's not changed on the books, but it's about to change in so many specific ways based on that. Another thing is based on looking at teacher seniority and who would get fired first. Would it be the teachers that have the less amount of experience? Or would it be the teachers that are performing the least? And then another one of the things is the teachers have to start to show performance. They have to be able to improve from step 1 to here. They can't just be sitting here most of their kids are not improving throughout the year, and that's value-added assessment. A lot of you are still familiar with No Child Left Behind, where we look at a group of students or a category of students, and if the teacher's not performing well, they're considered not performing as a district, but we never put it, or a school, we never put the emphasis on the teacher. Well, in California, they say now we need to look at this. We need to see that the teachers that are not moving the students forward, that are doing poorly, need to be evaluated and need to be fired. So those three areas that teachers have to start showing improvement, that we have to evaluate teachers based on value-added assessment. So all those areas, in a lot of ways, would be very, very, very nerve-wracking for teachers to be put under that microscope, that now they don't have job security. Do we, as people listening to this, watching this program, or myself, have job security as owning a tutoring and consulting company? If my students do not perform, I am absolutely fired. See you later. Goodbye. I'm gone. I won't have a job anymore with that client. Well, teachers, many teachers are performing poorly in California and all over the country. So they have job security if they're tenured. It takes so many dollars to fire a bad teacher. And one of Dimitri Melhorn's big pushes, but it's more of the California push, but everything is, he has an initiative. He believes that we need to keep the top 5% teachers in the United States, employ them, keep them working, don't have them decide, I'm going to go and find another job. And the 5% of the worst teachers, fire them. Tell them to find some other job. And he said he did the numbers. And this is very controversial for teacher unions and teachers probably watching this program right now. The big thing is, you have to be very, very concerned about this, is that if you got rid of the 5% of the worst teachers in America, we would not be performing 26th and 27th in math and reading in the world. We would be number one. That's simple. Get rid of the 5%. He talked about how much lost learning when you have a bad teacher. I'm not a teacher basher, but he has a great part. But we're going to be butting heads if you go to totaltutor.net. As Bronx Teacher and TFT, if you're fans of the radio show as well, is going to debate Dimitri Melhorn. So when we get back, I want to touch into more things, and this involves special education and the war that I'm going to be fighting in September as an educational advocate. You're watching Total Education with Neil, and we'll be back in just a moment. We're back to Total Education with Neil, and I think the funniest part of this whole thing is I'm by myself. The first time I had to talk by myself live on WRCT, your guest didn't call in, and you don't have a co-host. but I've learned my co-host is my content today. And one of the things we talked about is the education reform battle, and that will be absolutely on 88.3 WRCT Total Education Hour and the Total Education News Show. But just Google search Total Education News Show. We should have a Facebook fan page, and I'm hoping the television show as well will have a fan page at one point in time, so we can put share all the different television programs in the career that I've had on Bethel Park TV. I started out live in the studios at WRCT, went to having two great co-hosts in Dr. G and Jarrett, and now I'm by myself again, unless I could get Jarrett to come into the studio. But we're going to be taking guest callers next time. So we're going to talk about those things. So I'm really going to reach out to Dimitri Melhorn to have him on for a specific segment. But let's jump into right now. The one is special education due process hearings and some of the stuff that I'm really going into. I've had a great success as becoming an educational advocate. I'm not like a lot of them that were parents that decided to become an educational advocate because I fought for my child and won, and I wanted to help others. As a teacher, I took a different role as a special education teacher and writing IEPs at Brashear High School, and also working in the special education field and wraparound services and all these different things. And I wanted to fight for parents. One of my clients, I said, you know what, I'm going to come in and I'm just going to fight for you. I'm going to represent you at a meeting as the tutor and also the education advocate. Well, that grew into something that I do during those busy seasons, are in the midst of battling for parents. But this is probably the first time ever that I'm not just going to be doing that anymore, and it's going to get to the next level. And just to lead people into that level to understand what happens is, first we'll have an IEP meeting, or we'll open up an IEP, or we'll have an initial meeting. And at that point, I represent the family as the voice of the family, all the questions and concerns. Because what I have seen is school districts have decided to take it personal and attack the parent, show that the parent is wrong in certain situations and that they're the professionals, and how dare you question the professionals. But the sad point is, and I hope people out there, especially in the district, that they understand that I'm going against, and I won't mention districts, trust me. And at one point, if you make it personal against me, I will. But right now I won't. That you literally lie to parents because you're trying to save money. I understand that we've cut education costs in this country. We've talked about this on the television program. We talked about it on the radio program. But cutting costs for this country in education doesn't mean we're going to cut costs for the students who need it the most, and those are special education students. So my fight is for families right now that have IEPs and different things and 504 plans that are being told lies just to save money. You look at yourself in that paycheck you receive at that public school, ladies and gentlemen, and if you are not a teacher, teachers, I know your hands are tied, but if you're a special education supervisor, if you're a principal, a vice principal, if you are involved in the decision-making process, a psychologist, and you are choosing to lie just to save money, shame on you. So now I've gone down that road. I understand education law, and we're ready to go into due process hearings, and we're gonna and possibly one for sure, maybe two. And the due process hearing is when it gets really where a lot of school districts do not, I repeat, do not want to get involved in this because it costs the district more money. You might ask yourself, if it's going to cost the district so much money, why are we going to do it? Why are we going to spend all these dollars as a district when we could just give them the parents what they wanted? Because if we can save money, but then we lose, we could at least say we fought, and that's the school district's point of view. So we go from there to the process of going into due process, where there'll be a lawyer, education advocate against the school district, and they'll rule against the district or for the parents. And it becomes a very, very sticky thing. So I'm going to be going through that procedural safeguards this summer, rereading the procedural safeguards, understand the parents' rights, take the ERs and IEPs of the student that is in question and go through it with a fine-tooth comb and see, is the district truly meeting the needs of the student? In our last segment today, we're going to talk about what the Secretary Arne Duncan and also President Barack Obama and the U.S. Department of Education is hoping to do to help things for special education students. The sad part about it is they're really not going to help them at all. And the reason is because it goes back to what public education is becoming, what Catholic education is becoming, what private schools, all about testing. Not about learning, not about showing progress, about testing. What I heard my friend Dimitri Melhorn talk about in the first segment, and we talked about him, he doesn't see this. Unless you're firsthand in the front lines as a parent, seeing exactly every time, sending home bubble tests for practice and shutting down the school for 2 weeks for standardized testing, we're missing out. We are absolutely missing out. So we're going to bring experts on in that area as well. But I'm going to look at other experts as well on the program to bring the firsthand opinion. We might have parents on. So I want to know what you think. Email me, nhaley@totaltutor.org. Wish me on Facebook. Go ahead and fight for those parents. You might ask yourself one thing. Why are districts not willing to meet the needs of a special needs child? And I'll tell you, it's because of money. And now we are more and more becoming back inclusion, but the problem is it's not inclusion the way we need it. Least restrictive environment is becoming free, appropriate education, not least restrictive environment. And many little loopholes are happening to our education system. I covered 504 plans and the difference, and how districts, even if a child has a disability, wants to define if that child has a disability after it's been diagnosed, saying it doesn't look like that disability is really impeding the learning in the classroom. I am just absolutely flabbergasted of what's going on in our education system. In 5 years of covering this, I wish I could be at a Secretary Arne Duncan press conference like we're going to talk about in the last segment and really break down this whole thing. So you have to, again, go to my website, totaltutor.net, for more information. Twitter, Total Tutor, Neil S. Haley, Facebook, LinkedIn, Neil Haley, Instagram, Total Tutor, and Pinterest, Neil Haley, and check all of it out. And when we get back, we're going to go into what Secretary Arne Duncan wants to do to change special education. We'll be back in just a moment.
Oh, hey, bud.
Oh.
Where are you headed?
Just gonna hang out.
It's a school night. With Gary and Todd?
Yeah?
Not sure about those two. I've been meaning to ask you. This is tougher than I thought. Is there any drinking going on in this crowd?
No?
I hope not, because alcohol can lead you to say things and do things that you really wish you hadn't. Isn't this what you're supposed to say?
I know.
So if any of your buddies ever pressure you to take a drink, just tell them you promised your dad you wouldn't. I'd do anything to keep you safe.
Okay, I will.
I hope this is working.
I promise. Love you too, Dad.
They really do hear you.
Brian.
Yeah?
So start the conversation even before they're teenagers.
Good idea.
For tips on what to say, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
We're back with Total Education with Neil, and it was really interesting when I started to, what am I going to do without a co-host now? Again, I'm Neil Haley. You can go to my website, totaltutor.net, and all the other social media is there. People say, well, what are you going to do now? You had two fantastic co-hosts. How can you run a show yourself? Well, today I could, but we're going to have guests. The content today is just laying the groundwork for what we're going to look to cover in the next couple of months, and the challenges that are going to happen, and the interesting guests that we're going to try to bring on the program that are going to help parents, and also, I guess, the tax-paying public understand our education dilemmas. we're going to highlight some interesting people. We might bring a couple celebrities on to talk about their charity or foundation if they're willing to do it at 9:30 in the morning. Trust me, I'm not going to expect that they might call in at 9:30, but we'll see. But Total Education with Neil is going to really help the community in general for all the real issues that are going on. And the last topic I wanted to discuss, especially when we've gone through what the federal government has done to hurt education, how local districts have decided to give no rights to the parents, and our education system, especially for our special needs students, is going downhill. Well, based on the federal government cuts, they decided, well, we're now going to hold the school districts more accountable if special needs students do not show progress. And one quote Secretary Arne Duncan had, and again, I don't have note cards or cue cards or any of those things to be able to kind of spell out what he said. The one thing that Secretary Arne Duncan laid out is, if we push special needs students, they will excel. Yes, if we push every student, they can excel. However, you cannot do one-size-fits-all education, especially special education. If you're going to define it based on standardized testing, and you're just going to define any student that's special needs, you are talking a wide variety of learners that are with exceptionalities. You can't do that. You are really fooling yourself if you can define things like that. But so we can applaud Secretary Arne Duncan. Now finally you're going to hold the states accountable for the fights that I have to go through on a daily basis. But no, guess who's going to be hurt by this? The teacher. The teacher will be hurt because guess what? We are now going to expect them to take the same tests that the regular ed kids take and show the same amount of progress. You know, somebody who's, I guess, a Monday morning quarterback or a Monday morning teacher, and those are parents all over the country that want to knock teachers in general as that they just are incompetent. When I said the 5% need to be fired, not the 95 other percent of great teachers that we have in the United States. We would be number one in the world, and I talked about that in the first segment based on Dimitri Melhorn's calculations. This isn't going to work because you have to adapt the curriculum, as Jason the public school guy talked about. You have to modify the curriculum, which Jason the public school guy discussed before. How then can you eliminate that stuff and rate if they can read, rate if they can do math, if they have exceptionalities that they need those adaptations and modifications? So now we're going to hold public school teachers accountable. Hopefully this law doesn't pass. And this is something I wish that Secretary Arne Duncan would decide. You are the education source in this world. You're the one that's talking about all of it, Neil. I want to sit down with you and try to explain the plan to you. Well, I'm going to have Michelle Rhee on, and Michelle will have probably a little bit of a different understanding in things, but we have to sit down and talk about those things in so many ways before we go to that. So basically what Duncan wants to do is test, and more testing with special needs students. If special needs students are performing poorly, we're going to punish the districts by taking funding away or increasing funding after we take away certain rights from the districts and hold them accountable. Fine the states, do all these different things, but the only way we're going to measure it is through the standardized test. Children with special needs, parents with children with special needs right now listening and watching. Do you believe this? Do you think this is something we should try? Do you think this is something we should do to help our students? Do you think that finally, and I did see a family in Texas comment on my Facebook page, because I did bring it up on my Facebook page about that, and they said no. She said yes, they can excel. And my child, but she went down the route of not using public education system to do it. If you decide to hold your kids accountable with expectations and you have a child that's highly functioning yet has a disability and you push them the right way and you help them through specific things, they can be successful. And it has to start at an early age. But what we're looking to do is going to hurt the poorest of poor districts, the urban districts, the rural districts, the districts with hardly any resources. We're going to continue to suffer based on this. So, Mr. Common Core, which I call Common Crap, Secretary Arnie Duncan, Mr. I believe all special education students can learn, but yet I'm going to, instead of deciding to look at each individual's progress, which, Dimitri Melhorn talked about in the progress of value-added assessment, we're going to change things. Stay tuned. These topics will be covered and more other topics by going to my website, totaltutor.net, for more information. Twitter, Total Tutor, Neil S. Haley. Facebook, LinkedIn, Neil Haley. Instagram, Total Tutor. And Pinterest, Neil Haley. And you look at these things and you discuss these things and you listen to the other programs that are on my radio network and you decide, and the television show will bring on those experts that I might agree with, I might disagree with. We'll bring the Common Core framework people who are considered the gurus that wouldn't stay up till 11 o'clock at night for a recording, but would at 9:30 in the morning, and I will let them have it. So, half-hour show this week just to kind of, get us back in the swing of what's going on, but more to come. Last thing is I did discuss a great show on the 504 plan. You have to check that out, because you should see how districts try to willy-nilly. But remember, go also in Pittsburgh. I have one radio show on in Pittsburgh now. I did have to leave one of my affiliate broadcasts because I felt that my reach is enough internationally. But I love my flagship station, 88.3 WRCT in Pittsburgh, 4:30 Fridays. Tune in, check out the great education, and let your mouth drop. This is not the television show where we are not as controversial. We're really going to let them have it. I hope Governor Corbett comes on this program, or someone, to discuss why we're cutting education funding in Pennsylvania. And maybe whoever's going to run against Governor Corbett will be on this show, or a talking piece, because I am going to ask the hard questions. I'm going to ask the difficult questions, and you still are welcome to come into the friendly confines of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, and sit down with me one-on-one, not make that phone call. So tune in next month with some more great education talk on Total Education with Neil. Have a great day. We'll talk soon. Good day, everyone.